The ashes of my dreams swirled around me like a bitter snow. The grand opening banner rippled in the wind, mocking my naivete. "Congratulations, Elena," it screamed, as if Elena hadn't just ripped my heart out and stomped on it with Louboutin heels. They thought I was nothing. They thought they had broken Amelia, but they had only lit the fuse. If you have a sister, a brother, a mother, a father, anyone you call family who would always have your back, subscribe now and protect them. My sister, Elena, always had a flair for the dramatic, and an even greater talent for getting what she wanted. Growing up, I was always the quiet one, the dependable one, the one who cleaned up her messes. Elena, with her dazzling smile and effortless charm, could convince anyone of anything. She dreamt of owning a restaurant since she was a little girl, sketching menus on napkins and bossing around our unfortunate teddy bears during pretend dinner parties. I, on the other hand, dreamt of making her happy. So, when she finally scraped together enough money to open Elena's Eatery, a trendy little bistro downtown, I was her biggest cheerleader, her silent partner, her ever-reliable safety net. I poured every spare moment, every ounce of my energy, into helping her succeed. I handled the finances, navigated the permits, and even taste-tested every single dish, offering constructive criticism that she usually ignored with a dismissive wave of her hand. I even covered her rent for the first 6 months when things got tight, swallowing my own anxieties about money to keep her dream alive. The restaurant quickly became her whole world, consuming her every waking moment. I understood, I supported her. I was there every step of the way, watching her vision come to life, silently celebrating her triumphs, and offering a shoulder to cry on during the inevitable setbacks. Then Marco came along. Marco was everything I wasn't: confident, charismatic, and undeniably handsome. He swept Elena off her feet with his grand gestures and whispered promises. He was a regular at the restaurant, always sitting at the bar, nursing a glass of wine, and watching Elena with those dark, intense eyes. At first, I was happy for her. She deserved to be happy, to be loved. But Marco's presence began to subtly shift the dynamic at the restaurant. He started inserting himself into the business, offering unsolicited advice, questioning my decisions, and subtly undermining my authority. Elena, blinded by her infatuation, seemed oblivious to his manipulations. She started dismissing my concerns, siding with Marco on every issue, and treating me more like an employee than a partner. The restaurant, once a shared dream, became their exclusive playground. The whispers started swirling, insidious rumors planted with surgical precision. I'd overhear snippets of conversations: "Amelia's holding Elena back," or "Marco has much better ideas for the menu." My stomach churned with a growing sense of unease, but I pushed it down, telling myself that I was being paranoid, that I was imagining things. I wanted to believe in my sister, in her unwavering love for me. I wanted to believe that Marco was just a well-meaning friend, offering his support in his own clumsy way. But the truth, like a slow-leaking faucet, was beginning to drip, drip, drip into my consciousness. Then came the night of the investor dinner. Elena had been courting a wealthy businessman, Mr. Davenport, who was interested in expanding the restaurant into a franchise. The dinner was crucial. It was our chance to secure the funding that would take Elena's Eatery to the next level. I spent weeks preparing, meticulously planning every detail, from the seating arrangements to the wine pairings. I wanted everything to be perfect for Elena. That night, I arrived early, dressed in a new dress I couldn't really afford, ready to play my part in charming Mr. Davenport. But as I walked into the restaurant, I was met with an icy silence. Elena stood by the bar, her face pale and drawn, Marco hovering protectively by her side. She looked at me, and for a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes. But it was quickly replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Amelia, she said, her voice barely a whisper, Mr. Davenport doesn't think it's appropriate to have family involved in the business. He thinks it looks unprofessional. I need you to leave. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. I stood there, frozen, unable to comprehend what I was hearing. But I planned everything, I stammered, my voice trembling. I've been working on this for weeks. Elena's eyes hardened. I'm sorry, Amelia. But this is my restaurant. And I need you to leave. Now. Marco stepped forward, his expression a smug mixture of triumph and disdain. He placed a hand on my arm, his grip tight and unwelcome. I think it's time for you to go, Amelia, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. You've overstayed your welcome. Humiliated and heartbroken, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, the weight of their betrayal crushing me with every step. I walked home in the rain, tears streaming down my face, the grand opening banner a constant, mocking reminder of my shattered dreams. The rain mirrored the storm inside me. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Elena's face, contorted with a coldness I never knew she possessed. I replayed the scene in the restaurant over and over, searching for a clue, a sign, anything that could explain her betrayal. The worst part was the silence. No phone call, no text, no explanation. Just a void where my sister used to be. I tried to reach out, of course. Multiple times. I called her, left voicemails, sent emails, even showed up at her apartment, only to be met with a locked door and drawn curtains. It was as if I had ceased to exist in her world. The financial strain started to take its toll. I had poured my savings into Elena's eatery, expecting to recoup my investment once the restaurant became profitable. Now, not only was I out of a job, but I was also saddled with mounting debt and no clear path forward. The bills piled up, the phone calls from creditors became more frequent, and the weight of my financial predicament threatened to crush me. I considered seeking legal advice, exploring my options for reclaiming my investment, but the thought of a protracted legal battle with my own sister filled me with dread. It felt like another layer of betrayal, another wound to add to the already gaping chasm in my heart. Besides, I knew Elena. She could be incredibly persuasive, especially when her back was against the wall. I didn't relish the prospect of facing her in court, of having our dirty laundry aired out for everyone to see. So, I tried to find a new job, pounding the pavement, submitting countless applications, and attending endless interviews. But my resume was a constant source of embarrassment. My work experience was primarily in restaurant management, specifically at Elena's eatery. And every potential employer asked the same question, why did you leave? How could I explain that I had been betrayed by my own sister, that I had been unceremoniously dumped from the business I had helped build? The truth was too painful, too humiliating to share. So, I crafted vague, sanitized answers, talking about differing visions and exploring new opportunities. But my heart wasn't in it. I felt like a fraud, pretending to be someone I wasn't. Desperation began to set in. I started selling my possessions, parting with cherished items that held sentimental value. My grandmother's antique necklace, my collection of vintage books, even my beloved guitar. Each sale felt like a little piece of my soul being chipped away. I swallowed my pride and asked my parents for help, but they were already struggling to make ends meet. They offered what they could, a small loan that barely made a dent in my mounting debt. I considered taking a second job, working nights and weekends to supplement my meager income. But I was already exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The constant stress and anxiety had taken a toll on my health. I suffered from insomnia, headaches, and a persistent feeling of unease. I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air in a sea of despair. One evening, I found myself driving past Elena's eatery. The restaurant was bustling with activity, the outdoor patio filled with laughing patrons. Elena stood at the entrance, greeting guests with her dazzling smile, Marco by her side, his arm possessively draped around her waist. They looked like the perfect couple, the picture of success and happiness. A wave of anger washed over me, a burning, visceral rage that threatened to consume me. I wanted to scream, to confront them, to expose their betrayal for the world to see. But I knew it wouldn't do any good. It would only make things worse. So, I drove on, my hands clenched tight on the steering wheel, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I couldn't let them get away with this. I couldn't let them destroy my life and walk away scot-free. I needed to find a way to fight back, to reclaim my dignity, to seek justice for the wrong that had been done to me. The seed of revenge had been planted. I started spending hours online, researching my legal options, exploring different strategies for reclaiming my investment. I stumbled upon articles about partnership disputes, breach of contract claims, and shareholder rights. The legal jargon was dense and confusing, but I persevered, determined to understand my rights and explore every possible avenue for recourse. I even contacted a few lawyers, seeking preliminary consultations, but their fees were exorbitant, far beyond my reach. Discouraged but not defeated, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started gathering evidence, meticulously documenting every transaction, every email, every conversation that had transpired between me, Elena, and Marco. I scoured my bank statements, credit card bills, and personal records, searching for any proof of my financial contributions to the restaurant. It was a painstaking process, but I knew it was essential. I needed to build a solid case, a compelling narrative that would expose their deceit and hold them accountable for their actions. As I delved deeper into the financial records, I began to uncover some disturbing discrepancies. There were unexplained withdrawals, undocumented expenses, and a series of suspicious transactions that raised red flags. The more I investigated, the more convinced I became that Elena and Marco were not only betraying me emotionally, but also financially. They were siphoning money from the business, diverting funds for their own personal gain. The realization fueled my anger, hardening my resolve to seek justice. They thought they were untouchable. They thought they could get away with anything. But they were wrong. I was watching. I was listening. And I was gathering evidence, preparing to unleash a storm of retribution that would shatter their. The day I received the eviction notice felt like the final nail in the coffin. The official-looking document, with its stern language and legal jargon, confirmed my worst fears. I was out of time, out of options, and about to be out on the street. The weight of my failure crashed down on me, suffocating me with its crushing force. I sank to the floor, the eviction notice clutched in my trembling hands, and allowed myself to succumb to the despair that had been lurking beneath the surface for weeks. Tears streamed down my face, hot and bitter, as I mourned the loss of my home, my job, my sister, and my dreams. I had lost everything. Everything I had worked for, everything I had believed in, had been taken from me, leaving me with nothing but a hollow ache in my chest and a gnawing sense of emptiness. The world felt cold and indifferent, a cruel and unforgiving place where good people suffered and bad people prospered. I questioned everything, doubting my own judgment, my own worth, my own sanity. Had I been naive to trust Elena? Had I been foolish to invest my time, energy, and money into her restaurant? Had I been blind to Marco's manipulations? The questions swirled around in my head, each one a sharp barb twisting deeper into my wounded soul. I felt like a failure, a loser, a pariah. I imagined Elena and Marco laughing at me, reveling in their triumph, secure in their belief that they had gotten away with their treachery. The thought ignited a spark of anger within me, a flicker of defiance in the face of overwhelming despair. I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them destroy me. I had to find a way to fight back, to reclaim my life, to seek justice for the wrongs that had been done to me. Even if it was the last thing I did. That night, I had a dream. I was standing in the middle of Elena's eatery, surrounded by laughing patrons, the air filled with the aroma of delicious food and the sound of clinking glasses. Elena stood behind the bar, her face radiant with success, Marco by her side, his arm draped possessively around her waist. They were toasting their good fortune, celebrating their victory over me. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the restaurant into darkness. A hush fell over the crowd, the laughter replaced by nervous whispers. A single spotlight illuminated me, revealing me standing in the center of the room, holding a microphone. I began to speak, my voice clear and strong, exposing their deceit, revealing their lies, and unveiling their treachery for all to see. The patrons gasped in shock and disbelief, their faces turning from admiration to disgust. Elena and Marco cowered in fear, their smiles replaced by looks of panic and desperation. The dream ended abruptly, leaving me with a sense of exhilaration and empowerment. I woke up the next morning with a newfound sense of purpose. The despair had not completely vanished, but it had been replaced by a steely resolve. I was no longer a victim. I was a planner. I was determined to turn the tables on Elena and Marco, to make them pay for what they had done to me. I knew it wouldn't be easy. They were powerful and ruthless, and they had a lot to lose. But I was resourceful, determined, and I had nothing left to lose. I would use their arrogance against them, their belief that they were untouchable, their underestimation of my abilities. The first step was to gather more information. I needed to understand the full extent of their financial misdeeds, to uncover the smoking gun that would expose their corruption. I spent hours poring over financial records, searching for discrepancies, cross-referencing transactions, and building a case that would stand up to scrutiny. I discovered that Elena and Marco had been siphoning money from the restaurant's accounts into a secret offshore bank account. They had been using the money to fund their lavish lifestyle, buying expensive cars, designer clothes, and luxury vacations. They had also been using the money to pay off their debts, including a substantial gambling debt that Marco had been desperately trying to conceal. The evidence was damning, irrefutable proof of their financial malfeasance. But I needed more. I needed to find a way to expose their crimes to the authorities, to trigger an investigation that would bring them to justice. I considered going to the police, but I was afraid that they wouldn't take me seriously, that they would dismiss me as a disgruntled former partner seeking revenge. I needed to find a way to make my case undeniable, to force the authorities to act. That's when I remembered David. David was a former employee of Elena's eatery, a disgruntled waiter who had been fired by Marco for allegedly stealing tips. I had always suspected that Marco had made up the accusation to get rid of David, whom he saw as a threat to his authority. David was a sharp, observant, and resourceful individual. I decided to reach out to him, hoping that he would be willing to help me in my quest for revenge. I tracked him down through a mutual friend and arranged to meet him at a local coffee shop. As I sat there, waiting for him to arrive, I felt a surge of anticipation. I knew that David could be the key to unlocking the truth, to bringing Elena and Marco to their knees. The game had begun. Remember that time Marco accused you of stealing tips? I asked David, stirring sugar into my coffee. His eyes narrowed, a flicker of anger crossing his face. Like I could forget. Ruined my reputation. Made it impossible to get another serving job in this town. I knew he was setting me up, but nobody believed me. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. What if I told you I knew why he did it? And what if I told you I had proof he's been stealing a lot more than tips? David's gaze sharpened. I'm listening. I laid out my plan, carefully detailing the evidence I had gathered, the offshore accounts, the unexplained withdrawals, the gambling debts. I explained how I needed his help to expose Elena and Marco's crimes, to bring them to justice for what they had done to both of us. I needed him to get inside information. David listened intently, his expression shifting from skepticism to grudging acceptance. Why should I trust you, Amelia? He asked, his voice guarded. You were part of that world. You benefited from their success, too. I thought I was, I countered. Turns out, I was just another pawn in their game. They betrayed me, David. They took everything from me. Now I'm going to take it all back, and I need your help. After a long pause, David nodded slowly. Okay, he said. I'm in. But I want to see the evidence first. And I want to know exactly what you expect me to do. I handed him copies of the financial records, the bank statements, the transaction logs. I explained that I needed him to go back to Elena's eatery, to infiltrate their operation, to gather more evidence of their wrongdoing. I needed him to be my eyes and ears on the inside, to document everything he saw and heard, to help me build an airtight case against them. David secured a dishwashing job back at the restaurant. Elena and Marco never suspected a thing. They saw him as a washed-up nobody, a convenient source of cheap labor. They were too busy patting themselves on the back to notice the meticulous way he observed their every move, the careful notes he took during his breaks, the discreet photos he snapped with his burner phone. He learned their routines, their habits, their secrets. He discovered that Marco was even deeper in debt than I had imagined, owing substantial sums to some very dangerous people. He found evidence of shady deals, kickbacks, and tax evasion. He overheard conversations that implicated Elena in the scheme, proving that she was not just a passive accomplice but an active participant in their criminal enterprise. Every night, David would send me a detailed report of his findings, along with the photos and documents he had managed to obtain. The evidence was piling up, painting an ever darker picture of Elena and Marco's corruption. I started to feel a sense of grim satisfaction. Their downfall was imminent. I began consulting with a forensic accountant, a specialist in uncovering financial fraud. I needed to ensure that my evidence was credible, that it would stand up to scrutiny in a court of law. The accountant was impressed with the meticulousness of my documentation. You've done your homework, he said, flipping through the stacks of papers. This is a solid case. With the right legal representation, you could bring them down. I also started researching the legal implications of exposing Elena and Marco's crimes. I learned about whistleblower protection laws, which could shield me from retaliation if I reported their wrongdoing to the authorities. I consulted with a lawyer who specialized in fraud cases. She advised me to gather as much evidence as possible before going to the police, to build an undeniable case that they couldn't ignore. The closer I got to exposing Elena and Marco, the more paranoid I became. I knew they were ruthless and desperate, and I was afraid of what they might do if they suspected I was onto them. I installed security cameras in my apartment. I changed my phone number. I started varying my routes to and from work. I even considered going into hiding. One evening, as I was reviewing David's latest report, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. He had overheard Marco talking on the phone, mentioning my name, and saying that she was getting too close. Marco said it needs to be handled. The message was clear: they knew I was a threat, and they were planning to do something about it. I panicked. I knew I had to act fast, before they could make good on their threat. I called David and told him to get out of Elena's eatery immediately, to disappear without a trace. They know, David, I said, my voice trembling. They know we're on to them. You're in danger. David didn't argue. He understood the gravity of the situation. He packed his bags, wiped his fingerprints from his apartment, and vanished into the night. I knew I had to move quickly, to expose Elena and Marco before they could silence me, too. I decided to leak the evidence to the media. I contacted a journalist at a local newspaper, a reporter known for his investigative work and his commitment to uncovering corruption. I sent him an anonymous email, outlining the details of Elena and Marco's crimes and providing him with copies of the financial records, the bank statements, and David's reports. I told him that I was a concerned citizen who had stumbled upon this information and felt compelled to bring it to light. I urged him to investigate the matter thoroughly and to expose the truth to the public. I waited anxiously for the journalist to respond, my nerves frayed, my mind racing. Every phone call, every email, every knock on the door sent a jolt of fear through my body. I knew that Elena and Marco were closing in, that they were desperately trying to find me, to silence me before I could ruin their lives. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the journalist contacted me. He said he had reviewed the evidence I had sent him and was convinced that it was credible. He was launching an investigation into Elena and Marco's crimes. He promised to protect my anonymity and to keep me informed of his progress. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The plan was working. The truth was about to be revealed. The final step was to prepare for the fallout. I knew that exposing Elena and Marco would have far-reaching consequences, that it would shatter their world and send shockwaves through their community. I knew that I would face scrutiny, criticism, and even threats. But I was prepared to face the storm. I had come too far to turn back now. I had a responsibility to expose the truth, to seek justice for the wrongs that had been done to me, to prevent Elena and Marco from hurting anyone else. The day they tried to end me was the day their world started to crumble. They thought they were so clever. Untouchable. That was their biggest mistake. The journalist called, his voice buzzing with excitement. Amelia, we've got them. The offshore account? It's linked directly to a shell corporation Elena and Marco set up years ago. And guess who else is connected? A high-ranking city official. It's a web of corruption that goes deeper than we ever imagined. He was going to run the story. Front page. Above the fold. In 48 hours. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. The moment of truth. But I couldn't just sit back and wait. I had to make sure everything went according to plan. I had to ensure that Elena and Marco couldn't wriggle their way out of this. I had one last card to play. Marco's gambling debts. I knew he was desperate. I knew he was vulnerable. And I knew exactly how to push him over the edge. I started by sending him an anonymous text message. Your secrets are about to be exposed. The newspaper is running a story. Everything will come out. I watched, heart pounding, as the 3 dots appeared on my screen, then disappeared. He was reading it. He was panicking. Good. Then I sent him another one. Remember those guys you owe money to? They're not going to be happy when they find out you've been skimming from the restaurant to pay them off. This time, he called. His voice was frantic, barely a whisper. Who is this? What do you want? I didn't say anything. I just hung up. I wanted him to stew in his fear, to imagine the worst possible scenarios. A few minutes later, he called again. Please, he begged. Tell me what you want. I'll do anything. This was my chance. Meet me, I texted back. Alone. Tonight. The old warehouse down by the docks. Midnight. He hesitated for a moment, then agreed. I knew he would. He was too desperate to refuse. Now, all I had to do was set the stage. The old warehouse was the perfect location. Isolated. Abandoned. The kind of place where secrets could be buried, and no one would ever find them. I arrived early, dressed in dark clothing, my face hidden beneath a hooded sweatshirt. I checked my burner phone. Signal was weak, but enough. I set up a hidden camera, positioning it to capture everything that was about to happen. I wanted to make sure there was a record of what went down, just in case things got out of hand. I waited in the shadows, the silence broken only by the sound of the waves crashing against the shore. Midnight came and went. Then, finally, I saw headlights approaching. Marco's car screeched to a halt in front of the warehouse. He got out, his face pale and drawn, his eyes darting nervously around. He looked like a cornered animal. Exactly as I had planned. "Hello, Marco," I said, stepping out of the darkness. He jumped, startled by my sudden appearance. "You," he gasped. "What is this? What do you want?" "I want you to confess, Marco," I said, my voice cold and hard. "I want you to admit everything you've done. The fraud, the theft, the lies. I want you to tell the world the truth about Elena's eatery." He laughed, a hollow, desperate sound. "You can't prove anything," he said. "It's just your word against mine." "Oh, but I can, Marco," I said, smirking. "I have evidence. Bank statements, transaction logs, even a few recordings of your little conversations with Elena. It's all there. And it's all about to be published in tomorrow's newspaper." His face turned ashen. He knew he was trapped. "What do you want me to do?" he pleaded. "Just tell me. I'll do anything." "I want you to go to the police," I said. "I want you to tell them everything. I want you to confess your crimes and implicate Elena in the scheme. I want you to take responsibility for what you've done." He stared at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and rage. "You're crazy," he said. "I'm not going to do that. I'd rather end it all than go to prison." "That's your choice, Marco," I said, shrugging. "But either way, the truth is coming out. Your life is over." He lunged at me, his hands outstretched, his face contorted with anger. "I should have known I couldn't trust you," he spat. "You always were a treacherous snake." I sidestepped his attack, sending him stumbling forward. "Careful, Marco," I said, my voice dangerously low. "You don't want to do something you'll regret." He turned to face me, his eyes blazing with fury. "I already regret ever meeting you," he snarled. "You've ruined everything." And that's when I saw it. The glint of metal in his hand. A knife. He was going to try to silence me. For good. The exact day they tried to end me. I exposed everything. He came at me with the knife, a pathetic, desperate lunge. It was clumsy, fueled by panic more than intent. I sidestepped again, grabbing his wrist, twisting it until the knife clattered onto the concrete floor. He screamed, a high-pitched whine of pain and frustration. I didn't let go. I kept twisting, forcing him to his knees. "Confess, Marco," I hissed, my face inches from his. "Confess everything, or I swear, you'll regret this more than you can imagine." He was sobbing now, tears streaming down his face. Okay, he choked out. "I'll confess. I'll tell them everything." I released his wrist, stepping back, giving him room to breathe. He cradled his arm, his face contorted with pain. But you have to promise me something, he said, his voice barely audible. You have to promise me that Elena won't go down with me. I stared at him, my eyes narrowed. I make no promises, I said coldly. Elena made her choices. She'll have to face the consequences. I watched as he stumbled out of the warehouse, his shoulders slumped, his spirit broken. He was a shell of the man he once was. The newspaper hit the stands the next morning. The headline screamed, "Local restaurateur exposes corruption scandal." The article detailed Elena and Marco's crimes, laying out the evidence in painstaking detail. The offshore accounts, the unexplained withdrawals, the gambling debts, the tax evasion, it was all there, for the world to see. The phones at Elena's eatery started ringing off the hook. Customers canceled reservations. Employees walked out. The restaurant was a ghost town. Marco, true to his word, went to the police and confessed everything. He implicated Elena in the scheme, providing them with even more evidence of her involvement. She was arrested later that day, her face a mask of shock and disbelief as she was led away in handcuffs. The city official who was involved in the scandal was also arrested, along with several other prominent members of the community. The story became a national sensation. Elena's eatery was shut down, its reputation ruined beyond repair. Marco's gambling debts came due, and the people he owed money to came looking for him. He disappeared shortly after his court hearing. Some say he fled the country. Others say he left this world. Elena was convicted of fraud and tax evasion and sentenced to several years in prison. She lost everything, her restaurant, her reputation, her freedom. I watched it all unfold from a distance, a sense of grim satisfaction washing over me. They had tried to destroy me, to silence me, to take everything I had. But I had fought back. And I had won. I rebuilt my life, slowly but surely. I found a new job, made new friends, and started to heal from the wounds of the past. The nightmares eventually stopped. The anxiety faded. I was finally free. One day, I received a letter from Elena. It was postmarked from the prison where she was serving her sentence. I hesitated for a moment, then opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, filled with her handwriting. "Amelia," she wrote, "I know you'll probably never forgive me for what I did. But I want you to know that I understand. I understand why you did what you did. I understand that I deserved it. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. Elena." I stared at the letter for a long time, my mind racing. I didn't know what to feel. Pity? Anger? Forgiveness? In the end, I decided to let it go. I folded the letter and tucked it away in a drawer, a reminder of the darkness I had overcome. They lost everything. I just smiled. Revenge isn't sweet. It's necessary. It's about standing up for yourself, about refusing to be a victim, about taking back what was stolen from you. It's about justice. Would you have done the same?